Hello, we're going to continue talking about the chordates, and we're on the third class, which is the osteocytes, which is the bony fish. Most fish belong to this group. There's about 30,000 different species, and we have two types. We have a ray-finned fish and a lobe-finned fish. Their skeleton is made up of bone, which is calcium phosphate, which is a very hard matrix. They do have bony scales and a slimy covering of mucus on their body. That's going to help protect. It's going to reduce the drag during the swim, and it streamlines their bodies. Glands in their skin is what's going to secrete the mucus. Okay, the scales do grow from the skin, and they point towards the tail. That will minimize friction to the tail. Scales will grow quickly when food is abundant and very slow when food is scarce. So you actually can tell the age of a fish by the growth rings on the scales. They do have the lateral line, and there's like a row of tiny pits in the skin on either side of the body. They do have the two-chambered heart, which is the atrium and the ventricle. They are ectotherms. They do have an operculum, which is going to be a bony plate that does surround and protect the gills. It is found on either side of the head. Pretty much when the fish opens its mouth, it takes in water, and it travels down the pharynx, and the water will pass over the gills. The water will leave through the operculum. All right, and this is all possible through the movement of the operculum and the contraction of muscles within the gill chambers. They do have 4 to 5 pairs of gills, and they have the gill arch, the gill rakers, the gill filaments. This is just showing you this is underneath the operculum, and then you have your gill raker, which is protection. The arch is where the filaments that absorb the oxygen. They do have paired fins. Okay, pretty much raising and lowering the fins will regulate body temperature. The caudal fin extends from the tail and it moves side to side, which kind of amplifies the swimming motion. The anal fin keeps the fish upright and allows the fish to move in a straight line. The dorsal fins, there's one anterior and one posterior, and that's going to keep the fish upright and moving in a straight line. The pelvic and the pectoral fin steers, brakes, moves up and down, and even back and forth. They have what's called the swim bladder or gas bladder. This allows the fish to conserve energy by remaining motionless. It's a thin-walled sac in the abdominal cavity, and it's going to control the buoyancy of the fish. It's kind of it's upward support because the water is much denser than the air. There's a transfer of gases between the swim bladder and the blood, which is going to vary the inflation of the swim bladder and adjust the density of the fish. Inside of the swim bladder is a mixture of oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, which it does obtain from the bloodstream. And it allows the fish to move up and down in water or hover at whatever depth they would like. And again, it does conserve energy. This is just the structure of the fish, and we will be dissecting that so you can see that. Okay, we do have what's called the lobe-fin fish. These remain in fresh water, and they do have lungs. Okay, they have a fleshy muscular pectoral and pelvic fins that are supported by extensions of the bony skeleton. Okay, the coelacanth is the lobe-fin fish. It is a lungless species. The lungfish, there's 3 different genuses. They do live in stagnant ponds and swamps, and they do surface to gulp air in their lungs that are connected to the pharynx. And when ponds do shrink during the dry season, they do burrow into the mud and wait in a kind of a state of torpor. Okay, and this is the link to amphibians. This is the lobe-fin fish. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about amphibians. This means two lives. Frogs, toads, salamanders, newts. These were the first vertebrates on land. There are about 4,000 different species. The oldest amphibian fossil dates back to about 350 million years ago. Okay, the Urodales are the tailed ones. These are the salamanders, about 400 species. Some are entirely aquatic, and some do live on land. The anorans are the tailless ones. These are the frogs and toads, about 3,500 species. They are more specialized for moving on land. You can know that adult frogs use their powerful hind legs to hop along the terrain. It flicks its tongue to grab the insects. They do camouflage themselves. And some of them have poisonous mucus or distasteful mucus on their skin. The apodans are the legless ones, and this is the Caecilian, which is about 150 species. They are blind, they resemble earthworms, and they do inhabit tropical areas, and they typically burrow in the moist forest floor. Okay. In general, amphibians have moist, smooth skin. It's thin, it's permeable. It will rapidly lose body water, and that is going to be important for the adults to remain near water or damp habitats to prevent dehydration. Okay. And the smooth skin is going to be very important in gas exchange. Okay. They do have gills and lungs. Many amphibians go through an aquatic larval stage and they have their gills. So they breathe by their gills in their skin, like a tadpole. And then as adults, they have lungs and limbs that are adapted to life on land. And they do lose their gills and their lateral line system. They are ectotherms. They do need to lay their eggs in water. Eggs have no shell, and that will dehydrate quickly in the air. Males will carry and incubate them on their back, mouth, or stomach. Okay. Fertilization is external. The male will grasp the female and spill the sperm over the eggs as the female sheds them. We do have a three-chambered heart. Now, the three-chambered heart means that there's two atriums and one ventricle. So the blood will flow from the right atrium to the ventricle, to the pulmonary artery, to go to the lungs to get oxygen. It'll go to the pulmonary vein, then the left atrium, go back to the ventricle, pumped out the aorta, and to the rest of the body. So there is a slight mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood within the ventricle. And that is one of the reasons why they're not as efficient as the four-chambered heart, like we see with birds and mammals. Excuse me. Now we're going to be talking about the reptiles. This is a very diverse group. There's about 7,000 different species. We have snakes, lizards, turtles, alligators, dinosaurs, so forth. They have several adaptations for living on land that we don't typically see in amphibians. Their skin is entirely waterproof. It's made up of the protein keratin. It is dry, scaly. It will help prevent dehydration in the dry air. They sometimes have horny scales or plates that will fit closely together. They do breathe entirely through the lungs. They don't need to rely on that skin like the amphibians do. Okay. Sometimes turtles use the moist surface of their cloaca for gas exchange. Okay, they are ectotherm, which is cold-blooded. Okay, they do not use their metabolism to control body temperature. They use behavioral adaptations like basking in the sun to do that. And they can survive on less than 10% of the calories required of a mammal of the same size because of this process of being ectothermic. Okay. They do reproduce by internal fertilization, and they do lay eggs on land. Now, it's an amnion egg. So the embryo develops within a protective fluid-filled sac called the amnion. Birds and mammals also have this. There's like a parchment-like shell that will prevent them from dehydrating. Very waterproof outer casing, leather coat, And again, the amniote provides the embryo with the protective aquatic environment that it does need. Okay. They might have a 3 or 4-chambered heart. Alligators and crocodiles have the 4-chambered heart. So we're going to talk about the 4-chambered heart right now. This is just showing you the amniote egg. And again, the class aves and mammals also have the amniote egg. So we have 2 atriums and 2 ventricles. This is very efficient. So the blood flow goes right atrium to the right ventricle to the lungs to get oxygen, left atrium to left ventricle to the body. And again, there's a septum that is going to separate the right and left ventricles, so it will not allow oxygenated and deoxygenated blood to mix. So the next class is aves, which are the birds. There's about 9,000 different species. Some characteristics are that their bones are very thin and hollow, almost honeycombed. Very strong but very light. Okay, a frigate bird, which we saw in the pictures at the Galapagos Islands, has a wingspan of 2 meters, but only weighs 4 ounces. Many of the bones are fused together, which helps in reducing the number of movable joints, and it makes it a better flying machine. They have the 4-chambered heart, which is the 2 atriums and the 2 ventricles. They have lungs. They do have scales on their legs. They have a toothless beak, so food is not chewed, but it's ground by the structure called the gizzard, and their beak is made up of keratin. They do lay eggs, okay, and how mating occurs pretty much is just touching the cloaca to the cloaca. A cloaca is receiving discharges from intestinal, urinary, and reproductive systems. So a male will climb on top of a female back, twist her tail so the cloaca can come together. So it's just basically touching the cloaca to the cloaca. They are endotherms, which is warm-blooded. They warm themselves by the insulation provided by the feathers and a layer of fat. An average temperature of a bird is about 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Feathers are hugely in maintaining body temperature, acting as an insulation. They have excellent vision, perhaps the best vision of all vertebrates. The visual areas of the brain are so well developed. Just a little fun fact, an ostrich egg can weigh 3 pounds and measure 8 inches long. All right, so now we're on the class Mammalia. This is the most advanced, about 4,500 species. They have young that develop internally inside a uterus or womb. The placenta is going to give the fetus oxygen and food from the mother. And again, after birth, they are cared for by their moms by nursing with milk. Okay, they do have fur or hair at some point in their lives, which is made up of keratin. This is going to insulate to keep mammals warm. It traps air, insulating the body, and reduces the loss of body heat. It can be reduced to sensory whiskers on whales. Okay, they are endotherms, which is warm-blooded. They have that 4-chambered heart. They have a diaphragm, okay, which is a muscle that aids in breathing, and that's going to divide the body cavity into 2. They have mammary glands that produce milk, which is rich in fats, sugars, proteins, minerals, and vitamins. And we have different types. We have the monotremes, which are kind of reptile-like animals. These are the egg-laying mammals, the echidnas, or the spiny anteaters, and the duck-billed platypus. So these are the only mammals that lay eggs. Eggs are incubated outside the female's body. They don't have nipples, so the milk is secreted onto the fur, and the young will suck from the fur. Marsupial are the pouched animals. The young complete their development attached to the nipple in an external pouch, like the kangaroo. There's about 250 different species. And again, they complete their development in the pouch, which is called the marsupium. These marsupials are born relatively early, and then they fix the mouth to the nipple or the teat, and that will complete its development as it nurses. And examples are opossums, kangaroos, koalas. The placental animals are called eutherians, and they complete their development inside the uterus. So the young is joined to the mother by the placenta, which nutrients and waste are exchanged between mom and the fetus. Some of them are born at an immature stage and then take a longer time to develop, like rodents, bears, foxes, and some are born at a relatively advanced stage. Like a young colt stumbles the first couple times it stands, and within 1 hour it's ready to stand on its feet. Okay?